All right. Hello, guys. This is Paranormal Planet Live. I'm your host, Cary. Sorry for running a little bit late this evening. I was actually trying to find you guys um, a better story link to something that aired actually yesterday. And it's important to know, if you haven't heard, that the Pentagon has released 1,500 documents, 1,500 pages of documents dealing with UFOs, and a few different mainstream media outlets picked up that story. And the main point that they were focusing on is that some of the UFO effects were unexpected pregnancies. And I found that amazing that they're even bringing that up on Fox News, running a segment about it. And it was interesting because I was doing a search and I was trying to find a good link to sort of show you guys where that story aired. And if you type in, Brett Bear, UFO, etc., or just go to the Fox News channel, you'll probably find that footage of them actually talking about that. But that wasn't the only coverage. There were plenty of articles also talking about it from various news sources. And I guess the point to be made is that that is your disclosure, and it's going to come out this way. And they're never going to just, I should never say never, but this will be the way disclosure goes for the foreseeable future. They'll dole this information out. Investigators like me and you guys out there that are awake and interested in what's happening will disseminate that information, and people will slowly get used to it. And that's their whole idea about what they call predictive programming. It's a way of introducing huge change in a society without causing the overall shock that would normally cause a society to crumble. At least that's their hope. So, there's no way to say how big that is, because when they begin to talk about the unexpected or unwanted pregnancies, and yeah, John Greenwald dropped a huge document last night. He gets all the documents from FOIA request. So why not let him do what he does best? And he's been able to mine out quite a few different documents from them. And it seems like their willingness to give up these documents is becoming easier and easier. Probably they are part of the overall disclosure, and they're probably not looking to hide a lot of this information anymore. After all, they've already announced that these UFOs caused dramatic brain damage in a number of people that had close encounters, including some of the pilots that were involved filming the UFOs, people that they had studied who had close-up encounters, etc. And this is something that you can expect more and more of as we go along this year. And all of it, of course, largely gets buried under the weight of everything, all of the geopolitical things that are occurring around the world. It's been a while since I've done sort of a Woo World update, but in Woo World, where everything is tied together in really strange, interesting, and paranormal ways, including the economy. It was predicted months and months ago, if some of you guys have watched the show that long, where they had predicted already. The sources that I mentioned had predicted Cliff High, and Bixweir and a bunch of other really smart people had predicted this hyperinflation months and months ago. They predicted that the US dollar would lose its power around the world, which it's about to do. And the reason why is because right now the US dollar is used for the purchase of pretty much all commodities, the largest being oil. And now China and Russia both, and a few, Saudi Arabia, are now not going to use dollars anymore. And truth be told, they don't really need to, neither does any other country to buy commodities. So the problem is that we printed $20 trillion that's out there in the world um, for people to use to buy commodities, and they're not going to use those $20 trillion anymore. That's going to come back to roost, and there's your fuel for the fire. Of course, they didn't understand the mechanics quite how it was going to come about, only that all of their tools, linguistic data trend analysis, etc., was indicating that this was going to be the case. And so you can expect more of that. A lot of these guys are claiming it's going to be quite scary for a while. Eventually, we'll get our footing again, but the biggest prediction is for all of the currencies of the world basically to go to a gold standard. So that's the Woo World update for right now, along with the fact that, according to those same sources, a lot of the leadership around the world right now is being unduly influenced by alien intelligences. So I found that really interesting. But tonight, we're going to talk about holographic theory, and all of this kind of fits together. And Dr. Gary Nolan, the guy who the CIA has gone to study the detrimental health effects of UFOs on humans, has a Twitter feed, and it's interesting because he's allowed to say whatever he wants, I suppose. And he tweeted the other day that we should get used to the idea that there is, in fact, another dimension, and that if there is, it would explain through physics all of the paranormal activity that we're seeing, including the hitchhiker effect, cryptid animals they mention specifically, a whole host of paranormal activity. He says can be explained by one extra dimension. And he makes the point that how do we know that another life form hasn't become so advanced that they can't project into our reality something that to us is just as material as we are? And so that's the kind of possibilities that they're looking at. And you'll hear them say, well, these things, or you'll read in some of the reports where they say maybe these things have always been a part of our reality. And what they're talking about with that is the idea that this dimension has always been there, and these things have always been on that dimension, and that dimension is part of our reality. So instead of 4 dimensions, 3 of space and 1 of time, forward, backward, side to side, up and down, and then time, there could be yet another. And some people are beginning to suspect that information itself is that 5th dimension. Our senses can only pick up the 4, but that doesn't mean that another dimension isn't just as connected to our reality as the 4 that we're observing. That's the point. And these things are living on that dimension. Whatever form of intelligence you want to call it. And so that brought about the whole, it brings in the whole idea of, Blue Shift says fractal flattening. Yeah, you know what you're talking about. So it brings in the whole idea of the holographic universe, of course, because here you're talking about 3 dimensions of information, 4 dimensions that can actually all be represented on a 2D surface. And that's the basic, definition of how a hologram works. And the mechanics are a little on the deep scientific side, and so I thought I would try something tonight. I made just a video clip just for you guys here on the live show, and I'm going to bring it up. The first few minutes just explains the mechanics of the holographic universe theory. And after that, we're going to take a look at I believe, some of the more convincing glitches, as they call them, in the Matrix, that may in fact lend credibility to the theory itself and to the idea that, yes, this other dimension is there and these things are popping in and out of that dimension. So let me, and this is something that all of our physicists really are beginning to suspect is actually taking place, is the fact that we live in a holographic universe. So let's see here. Okay. And of course, I'll be editing this part of it out. I'm kind of not in the same office anymore, and I'm in between offices, and all of my time is being used up trying to get moved in. So you guys will have to bear with me for an episode or two. I just had this pulled up, and what I don't like is StreamYard's tools. To me, they're just not user-friendly at all. So I'm sort of looking for something else that I can use. And this is actually on my movie editor.
Blaster.
Okay. It's really strange. It won't let me pull it up. But I will be able to pull up the glitches here. Let's see. I'm going to set you guys aside here and I'm going to pull up this movie editor. And how's everybody been doing? Trevor, Blue Shift, Gloria. You guys are hopefully doing well. If anybody has any questions while I'm pulling this up, and here it finally shows up. And so take a look at this at the end. We're going to have some actual glitches to take a look at.
Question, what's happening inside a black hole, or even what happens to the boundary of a black hole, the event horizon, when light is absorbed? And honestly, our physics is telling us a lot of contradictory things. And our image of what an event horizon really is may be changing. People like Hawking and Leonard Susskind have recently come up with this idea that a black hole should not be able to destroy information. And what do we mean by information? Information can be almost anything. All of the different atoms in my body have angular momentum. They have charge. They have mass. They're all sorts of little bits of information that make me, me. And at the quantum mechanic level, the tiniest of levels, there are different amounts of energy. There are different probabilities that are contained in the structure of my matter. And information, in some ways, is a form of energy. It's actually a way you can describe something which is somehow, in a strange way, a higher energy state not being able to describe something. And so one of the questions is, if energy really can't be destroyed, energy itself, something that is intrinsic to the universe, you can't really create or destroy it. Is it possible that information is the same way? Is there really no way to actually destroy the information about what all of these particles are doing right now? So black holes kind of state look you in the face and they ask, supposedly, does it absorb everything? Space and time bend into a black hole so that nothing can escape. That means that any information about the material that fell into it is gone. The only thing we know about it, as a black hole absorbs material, it gets more massive. It actually adds that the mass of the black hole increases the overall mass of the event horizon, the area where space is so curved that you can't get out, can't extend. Anything light is completely absorbed. The massive black holes we know of in this universe are made of billions and billions of the same kind of mass as suns, like our sun. So it is impossible then, if everything goes into a black hole and nothing ever comes out, space and time go inside the black hole and don't come out. What happens to that information? And this has begun to make a lot of people wonder if we really have thought of black holes the wrong way. Maybe there isn't even an event horizon in the true sense. I actually had a friend of mine that studies black holes says, well, I'm not sure if black holes are really black. They may be very, very blue. And what he meant by that is maybe there are some tricks to actually understanding and get information out of a black hole. Maybe there really is some form of energy that can leak out. Now, Stephen Hawking wondered if quantum effects very near the event horizon could actually separate something called virtual particles, the energy of space itself. If you're familiar with Einstein's equation, E equals mc squared, energy equals mass times speed of light squared. Energy and mass are the same thing, they're equivalent. You can actually make mass into energy, and you can make energy into mass. Around a black hole, there's a very hot gas, very high temperatures, very strong magnetic fields. Perhaps there's a lot of energy, and that energy can actually manifest itself as particles, as mass. And the energy always creates particles and an antiparticle. They're called virtual particles. And matter and antimatter, the thing you know about it is they annihilate each other immediately. So there's a tiny little particles come into existence and annihilates, and this thing happens around us all the time. So if this happens near a black hole, it's possible one of these little particles can go into the black hole and the other one escapes. And all of a sudden there's a particle that shouldn't be there. The universe basically has a new particle energy from nowhere. And how can that work? And the information theory people say that what happens is the energy has to come out of the black hole. The black hole's mass begins to decrease, and there's this poor little orphan particle out there. Shouldn't that have a pair? So over time, tiny particles by tiny particle, these black holes can evaporate away. And maybe there's nothing about those virtual particles that contain some information about the black hole and what fell into it. It even gets stranger than that, because a lot of people think that time goes slower and slower as you approach a black hole, till at event horizon, time basically stops. It may be the event horizon a shell of information. Things are stopped in time as they fall into it, and right at that boundary there is a kind of sphere, a two-dimensional surface that somehow contains all the information about what's inside the black hole. And this reminded people of something that humans have invented. It's a hologram, a two-dimensional object. You can make it out of glass or a piece of foam, and you shine a light through, and all of a sudden there seems to be three-dimensional projections. And the idea is that we are looking at some fundamental way the universe stores information. Around a black hole where space and time have been crushed out of existence, there is a shell of information, something like a hologram. And a lot of people wonder, maybe that is the way the universe works on a longer scale, a larger scale. Maybe black holes are showing us intrinsically what the underlying nature of reality is. That there really is a two-dimensional surface of something that contains all information about the entire universe. Maybe in some way we are part of this giant hologram. And I should mention that the word hologram is in no way implies that somebody made the hologram. We're just talking about the universe may really be information contained in a two-dimensional structure, not the three dimensions that we're aware of now. This all sounds incredibly strange. I'm always a little bit afraid even to talk about it, but I think the thing to really kind of gain from this is that black holes are staring us right in the face. We're now observing them right there, and we cannot really describe how the universe should work with one of these things. They don't make sense. The universe shouldn't be able to lose information. So how do you get information when space itself are bent and nothing comes out? Black holes may be the key to where the next physics has to go. We all know that we need the next Einstein, a next quantum theory, something that actually describes how gravity works in very intense situations like a black hole. Now we're actually observing black holes well enough that we can really get down to doing this. We really have to figure out how the universe works around this principle, and we have to end up learning what the universe itself really is.
All right, so that is a brief, very, very brief, description of what the holographic universe is. So, I just kind of wanted to show the mechanics, because I think it's important for everybody to kind of study the mechanics of possible mechanics, I should say, of where paranormal activity is generated from. So some of the more fun glitches I found, I thought I would bring up and have us take a look at. Again, this is, it'd be the equivalent of something occurring in the projector of the hologram, somebody changing a source code or something like that, as they say in the Matrix, which ends up being a pretty sage movie considering, or series, considering where our understanding of the universe is going. And some of these are really quite crazy. So let's take a look here. I also made a little clip of these guys. And it's interesting because I had to, on my YouTube channel, and something I've never really done before is list this video as private, just so I could share it with you guys and make it easier than trying to use the StreamYard tools where you have to go through, bend over backwards to share a video file.
Black holes go right to the heart of modern day physics. Yeah.
And let me bring up our glitches. Now, some of these are pretty crazy. The first one's actually been shown on a major television show, but the video itself is not copyrighted or trademarked by the people who actually took the video. So let's see here. This is a moose that these guys filmed driving their boat down a pretty deep river. It had an outboard motor, and this thing looks like it's just walking on water. They had no way of explaining it and thought, yeah, boy, that is odd. It crosses right in front of the boat, as you can see. And that would have to be pretty shallow water. Too shallow for a boat to go down that size. And here is one of the more interesting clips that's out there. This is one of those clips where someone materializes out of thin air and, truly a glitch in the matrix. And it looks like they're wearing a white lab coat. Looks like they're just walking in their own reality somewhere. And of course, that was a dash cam. So we don't know what happened to the person after that. And the next is really interesting. This was during the COVID height of the COVID pandemic. And this is something where people thought that maybe the Vatican was using holographic technology. And that was the Pope disappearing, which is really, really strange. This next one is an airplane that looks like it's completely still. And this is one that I find really, really interesting. So this gentleman has somebody else walk up to him who looks just like him, dressed just like him, and taps him on the shoulder right before a gate swings shut and would have killed the guy. And here's one where the dog just materializes out of thin air after two cars come racing by. Again, this is one of those videos that people have analyzed over and over again. And so is that, are we looking at interesting glitches in the matrix? There's clips out there. The last one here is an interesting one because it shows a single spot where rain came down for hours and hours, and everywhere around this little circle of rain remained completely dry. And that's out there too for you guys to take a look at. So anyway, I thought it would be cool to talk about the holographic universe and then show some actual examples. I mean, you can see 100 of these examples just by doing searches out there for glitches in the matrix. And it seems like, people are catching more and more of them. And I don't know if that's because we're using better and better technology, or if there's something happening behind the scenes to the projector itself. And that's something that we should all maybe be very worried about. Although if somebody walked by and shut off the projector, would we even know? Would we just cease to exist? And one kind of unsettling idea that all of this proposes is the idea that the reality that you and I are in is somehow very much like a Hollywood movie made up of CGI characters, which are you and I. And if that is the case, most movies have a defined beginning and a defined end. So that's something that we should all consider. The world's getting really, really weird, and our understanding of the universe is getting stranger and stranger, and our understanding of paranormal is becoming stranger and stranger as we go along. And remember, though, that the paranormal is the normal, just not yet understood by science. And here on Paranormal Planet, we'll always try to bridge that gap between cutting edge science and what we're discovering in the paranormal field. So check out my books, Bigfoot Unleashed and Paranormal Planet, where I present my unified field theory of paranormal activity, and come by and see us at paraintelagency.com for exclusive reports. And I will be seeing you guys next week, Thursday night. I've got a really interesting show to talk to you guys about. So, and this is something that goes back into the hitchhiker effect somewhat, because it also goes into the Black Knight and into the research of a gentleman I came across who also believes that all of this paranormal activity is somehow being generated by an entity, non-human here on the earth, but a singular intelligence. And he came by that through a lifetime of ghost hunting. I find that really, really interesting. So thanks for being with us tonight, guys. Good night, Trevor, Brian, Blue Shift, Fishing with Sabrina. You're awesome. Trevor, all the guys out there, thanks for the support today. And like I said, I'm going to surprise you with next week's show, but I'll put out the trailer for it relatively soon. So till next week, just be careful out there. It is a crazy world, and it seems to be getting